Why not one buck rule? Well, here's a petition. Over 3,600 people signed it. It's petition to the Michigan NRC in which they slammed the NRC and DNR in so many different ways. We're not going to operate this way. Again, we see the people that are in charge of our herd as being our allies. Maybe we can help them to decide what the best thing to do is for hunters. One buck rule does not correlate. So now we're looking at yearling harvest rates from all the states that, there are 36 or 37 of them here, that QDMA collects. And I ranked them from the lowest percent yearling harvest to the highest. And guess where one of the best states down towards the bottom, or regions, is? I also, by the way, Michigan is green. Dark green is the whole state. Light green is Lower Peninsula, or SLP or NLP. But way down here is the UP. How is one buck rule a problem if the percentage of yearlings being harvested, and by the way, this has been going on for a long time in the UP, if the percentage of yearlings is that low in the UP, how's one buck rule going to help? It's lower than Illinois, it's lower than Ohio, it's lower than a bunch of other states. These are the one buck states in red. There's no correlation there. Only one out of the top 10 states is a one buck state, and that's Kansas. All the rest of them are spread across here. Now I will ask you to notice, Michigan is the worst next to New Jersey, a big hunting state. Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin. You're going to see a pattern here. Those states that have been hunting for a long, long time and have a whole lot of hunters and a long hunting tradition are going to be the ones that don't score as well in some of these things I'm looking at. So there is no correlation that I can see between a state having one buck rule and what their yearling harvest is. The yearling harvest rate, we'll get into that in a little while. One of those top 10 states was Alabama. You can kill 3 bucks there legally. You can kill this buck. All he's got to do is have a little bone showing above his hairline. You can only kill one that day. The next day you can kill this one. And then the next day you can kill that one. What's their yearling harvest rate? 25%, one of the top 10. Would one buck rule help them? Can't get much better than what they're doing, at least in terms of percentages. How about Pennsylvania? It's one of those top 3 traditional states. They have a 3-point APR and a one buck rule. Their yearling harvest is 49% in that chart. Before APRs, under one buck rule in Pennsylvania, the yearling harvest was 70%. One buck rule does not correlate with yearling harvest. Lots of states don't have it, but still have great age structure. Some states have it and still have poor age structure. What's going on? Northern states with lots of history, lots of tradition, huge numbers of hunters, and huge pressure on bucks cannot be helped by one buck rule. PA, Wisconsin, and Michigan I've already mentioned. They all have high yearling rates. So everybody asks me the question, can somebody pour me some water? I'm starting to dry out.
Here, right here.
Haven't had your lipstick on it? Everybody asks about Indiana, and I've already badmouthed Indiana a little bit, Chad, but so it goes. Hasn't it helped in Indiana? Maybe it has, maybe it has not. I don't know. Over time, dating from when one buck rule was instituted, the numbers of yearlings, or percentage of yearlings harvested in Indiana has fallen. But it was falling before. It was up at 65%, and it was down to 55% the year before they instituted one buck rule. And if you look at the whole United States, they've been falling all during that time too. And if anything, if you look right there, Indiana's just catching up to the rest of the nation. Is it one buck rule, or is it a trend that's happening across the country? Well, let's look at Michigan. Michigan's been falling over time too. Even before, 1/3 of the, right here, these 2 years, 1/3 of our NLP hunters were, under APR, so that brought it down a little bit. But here's a really interesting thing. That's Ohio. 2014, Michigan had a lower percentage of yearling bucks than Ohio did. How's one buck rule going to help us? Beat them. We already beat them, at least in that. We had one buck rule from 1921 to 1985. I grew up under one buck rule. The goal, be the first one back to the cabin with a buck. First in wins the honors. No concept whatsoever of continuing the hunting season. Never heard of the concept of passing a buck until I was 55 years old. You shot the first buck you saw, the earlier the better for bragging rights, then you opened a beer and played cards. This buck was killed right in the next county north of here. It was the second buck I ever killed. It's probably a 2.5-year-old 8-point, a beautiful animal. I killed him at 8:15 in the morning on opening morning in 1980. I was living right here in married housing on this campus. But I would have shot anything with antlers that came through. Anything. If he had 1 3-inch antler on his side, I was going to shoot him. 4 years earlier, 3 or 4 years earlier, I shot my first buck also on state land in Clare County. That was a half-rack 3-point. That's what we did back then under one buck rule. And that's the culture that guys like me have handed down to our children and grandchildren in Michigan. That's why we're different. This is how to spot a elitist hunter there on the right. It's the Budweiser. We carried that. These are in 2-buck years here. We shot any antlered buck we could get to, but we did that before too. And I'm not putting Fred up here to put him down in any way. He was part of the Michigan culture. He's our most famous hunter. He shot any buck that he could get his hands on in those early days. That was our culture. There's nothing wrong with it. But understanding it allows you to understand how to regulate. It's a gotta get my buck culture. One buck rule won't help that. Only 4% of hunters even get a second buck. If we remove all the second bucks, as I said earlier, we're still one of the worst states in terms of buck pressure. And I already mentioned South Carolina. Did you know that over 40% of our hunters, last year was the first year that if you bought a single tag, you couldn't buy another single tag? 40%, 41% of hunters, that's 250,000 hunters, were operating under one buck rule last year. What was the yearling harvest rate in, I'll go to 2014, that's last year of data for. You know what the yearling harvest rate in the southern lower peninsula was? 73%. 40% of our hunters under a one buck rule, 73% yearling harvest. Guess what it was in the UP? 20%. Same state, same 2 buck possibility for a tag anywhere in the state. One buck rule is not the answer for us. States like Ohio and Indiana kill fewer deer per square mile and probably fewer deer per hunter. But we're not going to do that in Michigan, are we? No way that Michigan's going to allow that to happen. You want to have a quota? You want to no longer have over-the-counter sales? How are you going to do that? How are you going to reduce the deer harvest? It just doesn't fit into our culture. But there's a way around it. Just have a lower harvest for 1 year. That's all it takes. Kevin said earlier. Just 1 year. And what you do is once that one cohort of yearling bucks is carried forward, they're in the herd. You have a larger number of older bucks the next year, and you're passing those yearlings, but you don't notice it because within 2 years you're killing the same number of bucks you did before. You don't have to reduce the buck harvest to advance age structure. A properly designed APR spares a large percentage. It's about 72% is the estimate up in the Northwest 12. Once established in the 2.5-year-old age class, you reach a new steady state.